And we're live. All right. Hi, everybody. We are joined today by the author of the series that I'm always talking about, never shutting up about, which would be Fireboard and Flamefall. I'll let her introduce herself. The beginning of this video is going to be all non-spoiler. We may get into spoilers at the end, but you're safe for now. If any spoilers come up, we'll definitely put it on the screen. Like I said, I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rosaria Munda. I'm the author of Fireborn and Flamefall, and the third book that's coming out soon that I'm writing at the moment. I'm in Chicago right now, and it's getting nicer, warmer. I don't know. I'm trying to think of anything else I should say about myself.
I'm sure we'll get lots of information about you as we go. But we thought it would be fun for anybody who hasn't read the books to give you a little bit of information on them through a would you rather question. So the would you rather question is having to do with two of our main characters. And the question is, would you rather have Lee's backstory or Annie's backstory?
Oh.
So Rosaria's going to let you all know a little bit about Lee and Annie. And then we're going to have to all make that decision.
My decision.
It's not an easy one.
That's a tough one. Okay, so Fireborn is set in like a post-revolutionary world where the two main characters, Lee and Annie, come from very different backgrounds, but they both tested into the dragon riding corps. So on the one hand, you have Lee, who was born a dragon lord's son, who was going to inherit like a lot of power, a big estate, and a dragon. But then in the revolution, he lost everything, and his family was brutally killed in front of him. And this is not a spoiler because it's in the prologue. So that's one backstory you could have. And then he goes to an orphanage and tests into the dragon riding corps. No one really knows who he is, kind of like an Anastasia plot. On the other hand, another backstory you could have would be Annie's, which is she was born a serf. So before the revolution, her family were sort of like under the rule of the dragon lords, and she grew up terrified of dragons because they could really take away everything that she loved, and they did. Her whole family was killed when they evaded taxes and were executed under dragon fire. So that's another backstory you could have. And she also goes to the orphanage and also tests into the dragon riding corps. So you can pick your poison.
Yeah, which really murdered family do I want? I don't want to start. I'm going to make Alan start.
I'll start. Look, your family's killed regardless. All right. So your family's killed regardless. Might as well grow up in the nobility. At least you had 7 years of being a noble. But I would be an Aurelian. I'm from House Aurelian, not Storm Scourge. But I pick Lee's background because the end result's the same. Your family's dead. You might as well have had a few good years, right?
Good square meals before the end.
I'm being very Atreus and logical about this.
What about you, Ashley?
That's really tough. I want to say my instinct is just to say Annie, just because I feel like we would have a similar experience if I actually lived in this world, because I am a female and I would experience the microaggressions and the hatred that she gets from the patriarchy. So I think we could relate on that note.
You don't want to escape those microaggressions, though?
What's that?
You don't want to escape those microaggressions? Get a chance to find it.
I guess I'm a sucker for just being tortured, and I would just deal with it.
Gain empathy through experience.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think, Jesse?
I honestly had the same thought as Alan with might as well, if your family is going to be dead either way, have a few good years first.
Right.
Annie had to suffer her entire life. He at least had a few good years.
Right? She might have enjoyed her farm time a little. I don't know.
Which house? Which dragon house?
I like the Skyfish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel like Annie's life, she's still facing a lot of the stereotypes that are still kind of put on the poorer classes, even after, the revolution. So I'm like, well, man, her life before and after is tough. But I don't know, to have Palace Day, which is this celebratory day of when the event happened that took away Lee's family. So like every year, the entire country celebrates your the slaughtering of your family. I feel like that would be pretty difficult. I would feel super alone. Like you were saying, nobody really knows who he is, and I think that would be really difficult. But honestly, I don't want to eat dirt. Annie has to eat dirt.
It's worms, okay? Get it right.
That's true. But there's a line in Fireborn about something else that she may have had to eat, and my heart,
her brothers,
I almost cried. So yeah, I'm like, you know what? I'm a really picky eater. I'm gonna go with my gut and say I would rather have Lee's backstory. Maybe I can get some big meals out of it.
For taste reasons alone.
So yes, now Rosaria has to answer the question.
I feel like, okay, so you're right that they both lose their families either way. But I think I would agree that it's like slightly worse for Lee because he not only lost his family, but he like feels really guilty about the stuff they did. So he doesn't even feel comfortable like mourning his family properly. And then, like you said, there's like Palace Day where they're celebrating their death. So I think maybe just you would have less guilt all the time. I'd rather go with being Annie. I don't know. I'm kind of a guilt-prone person, so I'd rather escape level.
That's true.
Well, we will beat up the bullies trying to take you and Ashley's food. Got you.
We'll protect you. Me and all 5'3" will do my best to protect you guys.
I'm not strong either, so
I'm not tall either.
Yeah, it's the effort. It's the effort.
We're going
to a few more more traditional author questions, of course. So this one is a big one for you in particular, and it's your inspirations for the story, which you acknowledge some of, but I think maybe for people that don't know, it would be really fun to find out.
Okay. So I like to sort of pitch it when I talk about it in school visits. I talk about how it's kind of a mix of the Blitz and the French Revolution and How to Train Your Dragon. And those are kind of, I guess, the main inspirations. So like the Blitz was kind of a random thing that back in the days when I didn't ever read history, I was like in a car with no audiobooks to choose from except for this history book about the Blitz. And I was like, I don't want to listen to this, but I did. And it was really very striking. And I think I had just read Ender's Game, which had made a big impression. And that sort of idea of like aerial battle was really in my head. And then around the same time, which I guess was a long time ago now, How to Train Your Dragon came out. It's so good. It's so good.
Yes, it is so good.
It's so good. Yeah. And it wasn't like before How to Train Your Dragon, I really didn't think of myself as like a dragon person, which I now know there are a lot of people who do think of themselves as dragon people. And I've interacted with a lot of them as a dragon author. So I feel like, but I was not that into like the mythology of dragons. I was sort of more into like hard fantasy. And then I kind of seeing How to Train Your Dragon and I think reading Game of Thrones, I read that around the same time. I was like, oh, there's sort of this hard fantasy way you can approach dragons as this like technological, like, I don't know, like weapon of mass destruction for the medieval or pre-modern world, which I just found really, really interesting to think about. There's this like international relations term from like Clausewitz. He's like considered the father of IR, and he would say like war is an extension of politics by other means. And so I like to think of dragons like that. Like dragons are an extension of politics by other means. So that was kind of like, that was some of it. And then revolutions, I was just abroad a lot in countries that were sort of in post-revolutionary settings. So I was in Paris for a while working, and then I was in Beijing for a while working. And in different ways, I think both cities are very much like living in the legacy of a relatively recent revolution. I guess Paris less so, but you still kind of see it in like this strange, like these, it's like hidden in corners, like, oh, Place de la Concorde, which is a traffic circle, was once the site of the guillotine. You know, there are these sort of really interesting ways that you see it in corners of the city. And then in Beijing, you could talk to people whose parents had been like kicked out of their homes and sent out to the countryside during Mao's sort of social engineering projects, various ones that happened in the 60s. So it was just really interesting. And so I drafted Fireborn, the first draft. while I was in Beijing. I think I was talking to a lot of people who had these memories of a very recent revolution that was sort of in the back of my mind. So that's kind of like a survey of the inspirations. Oh, and then there's also Plato's Republic and like the Aeneid, which are
Alan,
the nerdy deep cut.
Alan, do you want to say some of the ones that you caught? Some of the little references?
The references, yeah, the Aurelian cycle. There's a scene where they're in class, and they're having to translate on site and calling out figures of speech, and the teacher's like, "That's a terrible translation." Like that's an empty Latin class. Like I've had that experience both as student and as teacher. Same thing.
Absolutely is. I have. Wait, do I have it? Like, here? Yeah, I do. I have my old AP Latin Aeneid book.
That far text.
Yeah. Everyone uses the same one. Yeah, it's like crazy, and I basically still have things memorized from it. So you can see I was really just because I think with AP Latin, you know how this works. You just memorize the passages, then you just regurgitate them for the test. And so I can still do that. I don't know Latin anymore; it's gone. But I can regurgitate. I can look at that Latin and know what it means. Yeah. So a lot of the quotes that they're translating of the Aurelian cycle are really just adapted versions of lines from the Aeneid, which Alan probably was like, "Oh, yes, I know this line."
Awesome! It's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like that's almost how I sold the book to him. I was like, I sent him. Was it the author's note, Alan, at the end of Flamefall that I sent you?
Oh.
Yeah, where it's where it was the Iliad, because you'd already told me about the first one, and then you said the next one is the Iliad and whatever else it said. And at that point, I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to read this now. So if the second one is also based on classics, I guess I'm reading.
Oh, yeah. I try to keep it consistent. I've actually, one of the sort of consistent things I've always had, I'm not that much of a plotter, so I don't have a great sense of what happens next, but I have a sense of where certain lines from certain poetry that I like will end up. And then I've had conversations with my editor where I'm like, well, this scene has to happen because there's a slide and in the Odyssey, and she's like, doesn't care.
To care, that's important.
Well, so you were saying a little bit before we got started that your editor is a good example of what maybe the not as knowledgeable of these sorts of things, that your editor sort of represents that audience. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that's definitely true of me. I feel a little basic in that I don't know a lot of those. I remember reading some of this in high school, but I would never have picked it up. And so I think it can be very challenging. And I don't know if you feel like it was, or if you were like, no, I'm happy with how it is, but it can be really challenging to have those references and then be worried that it's not going to be an exciting or interesting story to everybody else. Did you struggle trying to decide, are people going to like this? Or is this going to be is it going to be too niche? Is that something that you were self-conscious about?
I was definitely thinking about it, but more in terms of pitching it, because I figured the dragons were interesting. If you can just make the dragons interesting enough, you can sort of fit in whatever else you want. It's like in Game of Thrones with sex position. You can talk about whatever you need to do for backstory if there's enough sexy stuff going on. So, dragons are sufficiently sexy, but
that needs to be merch. Dragons are sufficiently sexy. We don't need nudity in these adaptations. We just need the dragons.
I mean So, but I did learn how to pitching it. I think originally I was talking to my husband, who's a grad student in the classics, and his nerdy friends who are also grad students. And I was like, I have this book. It's Plato's Republic with dragons. They're like, that sounds so dope. That sounds like that's going to sell. And I was like, okay. So then in my query letters, I was like, it's Plato's Republic with dragons. And it was crickets. And I was like, maybe most people don't think that sounds amazing.
Outside of that friend group. By the way, I love that this group of people that might stereotypically be associated with being very intellectual, that you're like, yeah, man, that sounds really cool. The voice.
I love it.
But I actually am very curious, because you're kind of going into something that I was wondering while reading this, is what made YA the better fit for this series. I think there's a lot of people who enjoy both adult and young adult can't help but notice that often you see women in young adult. Do you think that played a role, or were you hoping to have it in young adult, or were you actually hoping to have it in adult and it was publishing that encouraged it to be YA? And did that Anyway, I'll let you elaborate on that a little.
No, that's a really good question. I think the gender divide between YA and adult is fascinating, because I think most people don't realize it's not actually an age divide as much as a gender divide at this point. And I don't know. I think trying to think the thought process that was going on. I mean, I think I had the feeling that YA was just in general easier to sell. There was that sort of pragmatic level of like, YA is a very big market. And there's many agents looking for YA fantasy. There were, I think not so much now. So there's just kind of that basic level of like, this is the way I thought it would be best to pitch it. And I think I also was thinking of it. I mean, I think the main thing, the like more, like less mercenary reason was that I had always kind of felt like books that I read when I was a teenager or younger had been like important to me, and that I had sort of been changed by these books, and I kind of wanted to write a book. The ideal was always to write a book for that age group. And actually originally Annie and Lee were much younger. So they were like, they were like, I want to say she was like maybe 14 and he was like 15 or 16. So like we actually aged them up significantly.
Okay.
But we did, trying to think what was the thought process there. We talked about how if it didn't sell as YA, we would go back and try to sell it as adult. So that was on the table. And then when we sold it as YA, we aged them up and also like made them a little more into each other. Which was an interesting like that was one of those things that I didn't really see coming and like resisted, but I think ultimately it worked really well. So I'm glad we did it. But that was part of the conversation making it YA, because basically what happened was we would age it up, and I sort of thought of them as being very adult. And so I was like, well, they're not going to start on like ogling each other because they're very mature for their age, but it actually made them feel young for their age. So the thing that you were hearing from readers is that it felt too middle grade, actually, which is like, it's all over the place, right? Because then it's like the themes are adult and the characters are seeming middle grade. So then, yeah, I don't know. And then the third thing about that I feel like I've noticed is that a lot of readers that have seemed to respond to it have been adults. Like, well, no, that's not true. Like, there are definitely teenagers, like younger readers who respond to it. It's just different levels. Like, I think the younger readers really like the action and the dragons a lot of the time. And sometimes they do really get sort of interested by the moral dilemmas. And then you see adults who are like, oh, this, like, they're really much more into the philosophical stuff, and they are like, why is this not adult? Like, this would be, and right. So it's an interesting kind of, yeah, I think keeping that appeal to as broad of an age range as possible has been an interesting challenge. That I like the challenge, but it has been something that's always in the conversation. Like, is there enough action to balance out the like classroom Latin scenes? You know?
Yeah. I say all the time, I love when characters are just sitting and thinking. So I absolutely feel that part of it appealed to me significantly. And I know Alan, when Alan did his review, was talking about the same thing, right? Like, you were like really surprised that this was YA, and you had expressed that to me while you were reading it also, because we were all chatting about it.
Yeah, it is funny. I think there's no reason why there are so many YA books that are like from more on the philosophical side, and then there's so many adult books that feel like they could be YA. So it's like just these arbitrary categories. And then with the gender thing too, like it's funny the number of librarians I've heard that are like really glad that there's a male lead in this book, because at this point they can't find books for their boy readers that are starring boys, and it's like just bizarre to me because growing up it was hard to find female leads, so it's a funny change.
I have seen that expressed before, that a lot of times part of the reason that this divide seems to be further perpetuated almost is that when somebody is, because you do, whether you want to admit it or not, I think when you're young, you identify with the things that you can relate to, and your gender plays a role in that. And so when young boys are kind of coming out of the middle grade age range, there's just hardly anything, like you're saying, that has a male lead in it. And so they kind of start to go into books like Wheel of Time. I know my husband is somebody who, that was a series that he kind of grew up with. And the girls have a lot of options in YA. And then I think they kind of like feel comfortable in that, and then the boys feel comfortable in adult, and then it sort of creates this further divide. So yeah, I love, and I also love Lee. I love both Lee and Annie so much.
Atreus is a hero.
I'm not gonna lie, if you had made it adult, I don't know how I could cope with the things that happen in, it's not everything is shown. If everything was shown more brutal, I don't think my little heart could have handled it.
Yeah, I don't think I could have written it. Like I think there's that level of like, I like that there's an excuse to not get super graphic, because I don't get it. I get much out of that as a reader, and I just would rather it not be on. Like I would rather be thinking about the emotional repercussions, but not like seeing the blood spurting.
It's like
you did such a good job at that.
The fade to black, but for violence,
Yeah.
The only thing that felt YA to me was just the age of the characters. Like other than that, like I would not have known. Now I knew it was YA, and I don't typically read YA, which is why I picked it up on Elle's recommendation, and I'm so glad I did. Just because normally I just don't like reading about like younger characters. Generally, they generally annoy me. These guys.
Well, if you're a high school teacher too, you're probably
correct. And so, like, it's my foolish students. But like the way these guys acted, like they're kids, but they are being forced to act older than their age by just the position they've been given, the grief, the trauma they've suffered in their youth, and it was so realistic. Like the way that they interacted with each other and the shared experiences of trauma that they have that are still so incredibly different, and the struggles that they have dealing with each other just because of Lee has that inborn sense of I'm better than you, and Annie has that inborn fear and like self-loathing of being less than, and it just keeps butting against each other. And then the backgrounds of the other kids, it was just so good. It felt so real, where even I read books where adult relationships aren't that realistic and complex. And you did such a great job. So good.
Thanks. That's really nice.
We always laugh that we need to start making merch of so good, like Alan shouting it. So hear people saying so good without thinking of Alan shouting so good all the time.
And then of course Betrayal, hero of the revolution.
I think that I think I'm kind of with Ashley too about it. Already is so heartbreaking. So many of the things that are happening. And I don't know if it's just because I used to teach. What my job was teaching private violin lessons. And so I taught a big age range of students. And sometimes I would teach in schools as well. And I don't know if it's like a maternal thing or something, but when I would see these characters, I'm like, I just want you guys to get a hug. You just need a hug.
Right?
Therapy right now. You need to
I mean, like, they're the ages of like my nieces and nephews. So like,
yeah, it has been weird for me because I started writing them when I was like closer to their age, and then now I think like I look at them sort of the way I think it's like changing as I think of them as sort of much younger than me. And it's like it's weird to look back at Fireborn. I don't often, but when I like open it for whatever reason, I'm like, oh, like this was written by a much younger person who like was, identifying with these characters in a way that I don't anymore in terms of age. So it's a weird change. It's
almost like you can identify with the memory of that. I think. Yeah, once you get older, that's how I feel, because I do enjoy both YA and adult. And I know there are some books where I'm like, this isn't where I am in my life right now, but I either look at it as I think about young people in that situation and it makes me sad, or I think about when I was in that situation. Not these exact situations. I hope I'm never in the situations that these characters are in. But I think we'll do another fun little would you rather segment. So this one, I also don't want to go first I think I know my answer to this. But this kind of has to do with the dragons. So would you rather have the dragons only be written by typo, my bad, by those of the old regime, or have no dragons at all? Because like you were saying before, is there like these weapons of mass destruction when they're in the wrong hands? So before they're like, they kind of are in the wrong hands. So I feel like it's, I don't know, but then I think of dragons like dogs, and then I'm sad.
No dragons at all. Like the old regime are a bunch of psychopaths. The nobility has proven they cannot be trusted with these tools.
Well,
so
you guys are not dragon people. I see you all nodding like you're not dragon people. The dragon people are upset.
I am
a
dragon person.
I struggle with this one.
Bracthanasia, y'all. Like, just bust it out.
So I mean, like, there's even, I think you say in a part where there are other places where they have realized there is no true equality if dragons exist. So there are some places where we don't have dragons anymore. And so that's kind of what made me think about this. And I don't know. It's like, for me, this is how I think of it. I think about the fact that pit bulls have got this reputation because of people that train pit bulls to fight. And I'm like, they just need some belly rubs, that's all they need. So I feel like I would end up maybe, Alan, I'm calling BS. You would start the revolution so that the dragons wouldn't be in the hands of them.
But that's not my choice. My choice is, you didn't give me that option. You said,
are you a member of the old regime? Because remember, we picked Lee's backstory. So if we picked Lee's backstory for one, then you are a member of the old regime.
No. Atreus has Lee's backstory too. He was in the houses of them. If you gave me the option of kick out the douchebags and give the dragons to the people who are going to do good with them, I'd pick that one.
Know. I'm totally cheating. I'm trying to find a way around it.
Right? I'm like, well,
I gotta let the dragons exist and just do what I can to like sneak into the dragon stables, basically, and like pet them and tell them nice things and be like, yeah, you're like, good boy, good girl, to the dragons.
I mean, as a pit bull owner myself, like I can totally see that. Which is
like
funny.
That comparison.
I've been told to get rid of my dog. Like when I was pregnant with my first kid, I had people tell me, well, you should get rid of that dog now because you're going to have a baby. I'm like, why?
Makes me so sad. Ashley, I feel like your heart is breaking over this one.
Yeah,
I know.
Because I was thinking, I mean, I would have to say no dragons at all, because if it's the old regime, they're not, some things that you see in book 2, they're not being treated right.
I know.
There's a specific scene that I get very upset or like emotional when I read books. So I'm not gonna lie, there were like 4 or 5 times in the sequel that like I was like in tears. And there's this one scene, and it was the worst scene of all. That involved
you give me a hint?
It's like, is it slightly somewhat earlier on? And it has to do with basically a bully like individual trying to
it stems from that, but it actually happens at the end. It was kind of like happy tears. I guess you could say.
Okay.
Yeah, happy tears.
I'm a crier, like in general. So like, hang it up.
I almost cried so many times in Flame
so
Flood. I've never cried reading a book, but I got close. Like if I wanted to be in my feelings, I could have. And I was messaging Alan and another friend being like, guys, what the heck? I'm almost crying. And my friend who is a crier, I'm like, you're going to cry. So
also, speaking of in their feelings, I just want to applaud you for creating a male character that is allowed to feel his feels and like show that aspect of like grieving and getting comfort for other characters. I feel like that'll be really important for adults and teenagers alike to see that. I thought that was really refreshing and just really just awesome to see.
Thank you. I'm glad. I had mixed feelings about that. Like my agent and my editor were like, my agent was like, I love book 5 of Harry Potter. You should make it like book 5 of Harry Potter, where he's like, and I was like, okay. And then my editor was like, no, book 5 of Harry Potter. Like that is the worst Harry Potter book. And so I think similarly, like some people are like very into the PTSD. And like I did have an email from a young reader who was like, I didn't like book 2 as much as book 1 because Lee is not winning as much. And he's just kind of sad. And I was like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. But who knows? Maybe one day he'll come back and appreciate it or something when he's really sad. Who knows?
So I feel like we need to get your answer to the question. We can't let you out of answer. But also, I just want to ask, so they emailed you to tell you, like, I didn't like this thing about it. Like,
he emailed me with a suggestion for book 3, and then I asked if he'd read book 2, and he gave me his feelings about it. It was really sweet. I love hearing from young readers.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can accept that. If they're young, I'm like, all right. But if it was like a 40-year-old being like, excuse me, this is what I think you should have done, I would have been like,
Well,
no.
It's true he didn't say his age, so I don't know.
Maybe
but
he's
I
just
assumed younger.
It
Wait, what did you say?
was someone's granddad.
Oh, God.
I didn't like Lee in book 2.
We'll never know.
But yes, have the dragons.
All right. So I feel like I have to take a pass on this because it may or may not be a spoiler for book 3. I'm sorry, guys.
How dare you? This is upsetting. I don't know how to feel now.
Get out of jail free card for me.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll ask about creative control after you just mentioned that. So I think a lot of people have very extreme feelings about this based on sometimes what they've heard of some authors' experiences and then sometimes misconceptions. So are there things about having creative control that you wish maybe more people knew, or are there things that, like, for example, your series got a cover change, and that's something that I think everybody knows is kind of irksome to readers, and just any thoughts on that aspect of publishing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's sort of different areas of creative control, right? And I think when you sign up to traditional publishing, you are kind of like surrendering specifically the promo and like packaging side of it. You're just like no control. You don't control the title. You don't control the cover, and it's like you're making a deal with the devil. And this is that, like, therefore you don't control these things, but your book, will be in Barnes and Nobles across the country, hopefully. Like, so that's kind of like the price that you pay.
Title?
No. So, like, for instance, I'm trying to think. Oh, so yeah. So I don't control the title. We'll put it that way. And which is, I think sometimes it's fine. So I don't feel that strongly about titles that I've come up with or not. That's not a big deal to me. The covers was hard because I like my books to match. So I understand why other people don't want their books to match. And I was in the grand scheme of things, I think I was pretty lucky because my editor has been much more, so she's sort of like the project manager. So she doesn't really control this either, but she's sort of moving it forward, but she can be shut down by sales or marketing at any time if they don't like what she's doing. So basically they, were like, we want to repackage. And she was like, okay. And then she had to find an artist to repackage. And she's been really good about sort of including me in those conversations, which you basically have the standard contract, unless you're like a very powerful author, is right of consultation for title and cover, which I've seen described as the right to cry when someone shows you something. It's not a right of veto, right? It's like, you have the right to be asked, and then you can say something and they can be like, okay. And that's it. You just get to say your piece and that's it. So she's been really good about including me beyond what that beyond what that contractual requirement is, which I've appreciated a lot. So that's like the promo side, the packaging side. And then, but I feel like creatively is much more important to me. And I think that's where you often hear a lot of, I think it depends on the author and it depends on the editor, obviously. But the thing that I think is a common misconception, at least for my experience, is that my editor is very destructive and involved in changing the book, but in ways that I think make the book better. And I think I think there's this sense that the author needs to stay true to their guns, and the editor's out to get their, to destroy their work or something. There's these weird, contrarian, or not contrarian, what's the word? It's a sense that the relationship's full of conflict. And I feel like in my case, every time that I had to rewrite this book, which was many times, it definitely got better. And sometimes my editor will be like, oh, this isn't quite working. And I wish it worked, but she's right. And I think that being willing to recognize that you're wrong, and often the worst authority on your own work, or like what you're doing versus what you want to be doing. It's been something that like I feel very indebted to my editor for, and something that doesn't really, people assume she's actually working against me. It's just an interesting side of publishing that I've noticed. And you often see the books I think will come out, but sometimes I'll have friends who will say, oh, maybe this editor like over edited this book because it's like not good. And usually what my sense when I read these books is like, no, this was a second draft and the editor didn't edit enough. And there's, I think, an interesting, the landscape of being an editor is sort of like I don't think there's like oversight. So you can like revise 1 or 2 rounds, or you can do 7 rounds. Your boss doesn't care, but you need to deliver a product eventually. So I think a lot of editors will just be like, okay, once is good, then that's it. So I felt very lucky to have an editor who just keeps revising. Like Fireborn, we worked on for a year after we sold it to her because she just was like, nope, we're going to do this again. And we kept going for like maybe 6 rounds of revision until it was where we wanted it to be. So
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's great that you have an editor who wants to make sure that this is the best it can be.
Yeah.
I think that ties in a little bit into the idea of like the pros and cons of publishing, of traditionally publishing, I should say.
Yeah.
And having something like, the packaging thing where you said the right to cry, basically. But at the same time, you mentioned this is the trade-off if you want it sold in Barnes and Nobles across the country. So are there other pros and cons that aren't necessarily tied to creative control that you feel like really lucky with, or you feel like people maybe misunderstand sometimes?
I mean, I feel like it's a real load off my back to not have to worry about like, in a broad sense, I don't have to worry about trying to sell it myself. Like there's other people who are going to be going out and like, that's the job of someone at Penguin. Just because I'm so bad at like marketing myself or like self-promoting, it's just like, it just makes me so uncomfortable. And like even sort of in the basic like Instagram and Twitter has taken a lot of adjusting to get like used to it because I'm just terrible at it. So I really appreciate that. As far as cons go, I think just like the deadlines are hard, right? Like especially for a series and a YA series particularly, you're really expected to write a book every 12 months. And like, again, if you have a nice editor, that's helpful. So like for my second book, she got me more time. So I spent more time on Flamefall, like it was maybe 18 months total of writing, which was really nice. But like that sort of pressure to make sure you're hitting these benchmarks is hard, can be hard. Some people really like it. Some editors, I think, or some writers thrive on those deadlines, but I don't seem to be one of those writers.
I think there are a lot of writers that don't seem to be those writers.
Yeah.
I actually think it's pretty crazy because you still do other things outside of writing, correct?
Not too much. Well, so at first I was like gonna quit my day job because I was a preschool teacher, and the way the math kind of works out, preschool teachers are not that well paid. So it was like, well, I might as well quit my job. And so I was writing full time, but I realized I was just miserable. I didn't like it as a full-time job. It used to be a hobby that I enjoyed. So I've been sort of picking up other things that I do. So I have like nannying girls on the side and things like that are just kind of like very flexible, small things that give me structure and get me out of the house. But I don't know. I think, I don't know, like if I were working full-time and also trying to make these deadlines, I think I would be like a very bad wife. I would just not be there, like emotionally.
No time for family.
Yeah. I feel like I'm already sort of, my head's in the clouds all the time as it is. I don't know.
Well, actually, man, I feel like you're like perfectly segueing into these conversation topics because I was going to ask like writing versus life balance and how you balance that. It's like you read my mind. I did not. For the people watching, I didn't submit this beforehand. It's not like we're not on Jim Fallon where it's like you actually already know the whole interview.
I'm just calling it. I don't have a good balance. I don't know. It's like it's just kind of a all or nothing, which is unhealthy. But I have a really hard time like disengaging. I mean, I feel like Elle, you also write, right? Like, how do you? What's your secret?
I will admit that I think for a lot of people, 2020 has really changed their schedules around, and 2020 was exceptionally so for me in that regard. I think most people who watch my channel know that I lost my dad in 2020, and a lot of it had to do with him not getting like the medical attention he really needed, and I became his caretaker. And so that was my full-time job, and I thought it was going to be my full-time job, and then he would start to recover, and then I could get back into my routine, my schedule. But then he passed away after 4 months of 5 different hospital visits, a surgery, and just all these things. And so since then, it's been like trying to get back into it, and even just trying to find a schedule, like a regular schedule again. And so currently, some of these people will know, I mean, I sent them the link at like 1:30 in the morning that my work schedule has basically turned into, I work a few hours in the afternoon, and then when my husband comes home, I spend time with him and our dog and do like house stuff. And then I'll work anywhere from 10 till 1, 2, 3, 4, then this week 5 in the morning. And
oh my God.
Sometimes it's writing, sometimes it's editing for stuff with the channel, sometimes it's World Hopper stuff, which all of these lovely people are a part of. It's a mix of things, and I feel like I still haven't figured out the balance either.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know, but I'm asking you.
I mean, I relate to that too, though, because like I was awake when you sent that link. Like everyone always asks, like I'm like, I just don't sleep. Like I don't know.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Because I would like to find it, because I have like my day job, and then I do like marketing, I do freelance work, I have kids, and I'm like, we just make it work.
And then Alan, you have what did you post that one time? It's something like you purposefully stay up late as a form of rebellion.
Yeah.
The lack of control you have during your day.
To get up stupid early to go stand and try to keep the attention of 30 kids in a room for 8 hours. And then, I come home, I'm exhausted. I'm non-functional if I don't nap. But I refuse to nap because that's a colossal waste of time. So I try to do anything before my wife gets home at like 6:30 or so, and then you eat, and then by then the entire evening's gone. I have no energy to do anything, hanging out with my wife. She goes to bed, and so I stay up after she goes to bed because it is literally the only time that I finally have any real like energy or bandwidth to do anything. And unfortunately, that perpetuates the cycle of me being exhausted all the time.
Yeah.
So it's very, very frustrating.
I feel like as a parent, that's something I do all the time, because it's like my only time to be away from small people is when they are asleep.
And that's another thing too with just
literally.
Wow, I feel like with quarantine as well, for me, especially with my situation, because I was my father's caretaker, my husband, who worked at a grocery store, so he's an essential worker, it was very important that I not get sick, because he didn't have FMLA, doesn't cover in-laws, so he wouldn't have been able to get time off. So I had to stay. I was in the house all the time. I like hardly ever left. If we needed groceries, he would pick them up before he came home. And I think that quarantine has totally changed that time, like what Jesse was saying, where even though I don't have kids, of course, I feel like the time for myself is in those late hours. It's also when a lot of other people are asleep, so I feel like the distractions aren't there as much. And so, I don't know, I just feel like being stuck in the house all the time kind of forces you during the day when people are awake to want to engage, because I'm like all alone all day, if that makes sense. And then, so at night, I'm like, okay, now I can focus because I'm never around other people. And that's something that I think, I don't know, it definitely has an effect on mental health. It'll be interesting in years to come to see the studies that come out about how behavior has changed and fluctuated as a result of people being inside away from others so much.
Yeah. And what's permanent?
Do you feel like that contributed to being productive in writing for you, or was it actually, do you feel like having a negative effect on you?
It's hard. It's such a blur. It's hard for me to remember the when Flamefall, like, because I was writing it, I think, during the pandemic, but I can't remember. I don't think it was helpful. Put it that way.
Sometimes you just need to go out and have a nice time, get some sunlight and be
Yeah.
around other people. And then even if you're an introvert, it's just nice to be outside. And
Right.
not that you
And
can't be
I was a big cafe writer before. So yeah. It occurred to me recently that I've only been writing book 3 in my own apartment. Like I have not written like any of it elsewhere. And that's like a first for me. And actually Fireborn I wrote in like 3 different continents, like just a lot of travel.
That's really interesting.
That's awesome.
It's, you know, it was fun. It seems really like, it's like, I can't believe that happened now. But I think a big part of my sort of like just inspiration, like passive inspiration comes from like traveling and seeing new places. And so I just feel like at this point, like that well is just run so dry. But hopefully, I don't know, hopefully we'll get to some sort of after time situation soon. Who's my cat?
Oh my goodness.
Aww.
He's 11 months
Kitty's
old.
Name.
He's Pan.
Pan.
Yeah.
I actually, since you were mentioning being in all these different places and being inspired by all of that, I'm curious if you would ever want to have an adaptation. Would you want it to be a show, a movie, or a game? And if it would be a show or a movie, where would you want it to be shot?
Oh.
Alan,
Wait, Alan?
Alan has opinions.
Oh no, I actually have a question after this.
Oh, okay.
This should be this. If you're asking me, I think it could be a movie as long as Atreus is cast right. Like that's the only thing. Like anybody else, they'll get a generically attractive person. But Atreus needs to be perfect.
Okay. Well, as it happens, a casting of Atreus has been suggested to me before by people who know more than I do. So I should explain that Fireborn is currently, it's been optioned by a packaging company that is trying to get it picked up by a larger studio. So it's like in the middle of who knows what. But
Watch it too.
one day, who knows? No, fingers crossed. But so to answer your question, Alan, one of the names that was suggested that I thought was very good for just spitballing ideas for an Atreus character would be Mads Mikkelsen, who is a
Yes.
yeah. Okay, you guys know. Okay, wait. I have this picture of you were asking about this.
Mads Mikkelsen would be a good one.
I love him.
Right?
Oh, I'm down.
That would be great. Yes. I mean, a lot of people wanted him to be Geralt in the Witcher adaptation.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So
Interesting.
he missed, he didn't get to be that one. So
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't
You know
know
who
he
is
had such a
though?
big-
Henry Cavill.
I know, before we got started, Ashley was saying that she just basically sees everybody as Henry Cavill.
Henry Cavill. I
It's
love
Witcher
it.
was
nice
just
to
what
look
you
at.
wanted. Yeah.
I mean,
That's awesome. So would you want it to be a movie or a show, or do you actually think maybe a video game could be fun too?
I don't play video games. I know I should, and I know many people have given me like the speeches about how it's a high art form that I need to like get into. But I just like
A high art form? That's what they've said?
yeah.
I love that.
They pitch
I
it
love
for
video
me.
games. So.
So I know like the premises of a lot of video games. I just don't physically don't understand how to use a control. And people have tried to explain, but I can't. And they weren't like allowed in my house when I was a child. So it's just like, I think I just am too old. And so, I don't know. I guess it could be cool as a video game. I never thought about it as a video game. It's an interesting idea.
There's a game called Draken. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with that game, but there are dragons, and or there's a dragon, and it's super fun. The dragon in that one talks. It's an older game. And I feel like if you went back and played it now, the graphics would look terrible compared to modern graphics. But
Yeah.
I always, whenever I have books with dragons in them, I always am like, well, this could be a video game. It'd be really fun, because in that one, you do end up riding the dragon, and then you use the dragon to like fire on enemies and things like that. So I could see the gameplay aspect being kind of similar, although the plot would be there are these games called Telltale games where there's literally no control other than like you push a button sometimes.
They're narrative games.
They're
I
like
do that.
yeah. So maybe something like that.
Okay.
Bankrupt.
Yeah, I can handle that.
I am
I mean, I don't need
curious,
to play the game. I can just let other people play it, so it doesn't constrict the
That's
format.
true. That's true. Alan, you're called on now.
My question. Okay. Where did you live where you got the inspiration for all the karst, because it's cool, but I have never seen a fantasy book use like the word karst as much, and and I don't know why, because it's so cool, like the holes in like the cliffs and stuff, But that's not something that someone just like comes up with. You know what I mean? It's going to be a bunch of karst in this book. Like, where did you see it? Like, surely you saw it somewhere.
Okay, so the word I think I saw, I mean, I feel like everyone's seen karst. They just don't call it karst, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not everyone, but like, it's not that uncommon of a geological thing to see if you like go to coasts, or like watch How to Train Your Dragon, or I don't know.
Yes.
But like, right. I think the word I encountered for the first time, we'd been in Beijing for a year, and then on our way back to the US, we went like south into southern China, and we didn't go. There's like an area that actually inspired the geography in like that Avatar, the blue one, not the show. Yeah, and so we nearly went to that national park, we didn't, and then instead we went to like the area around Guilin, which has a similar type of karst situation going on. I think it's on my Instagram. If you go to like #behind Flamefall, you'll see some karst. And that was where I think just seeing, like looking up the terms, like looking up on Wikipedia, the Chinese like info sites often refer to it as karst, which is not a common word in English, even though it is a word in English. And so that was kind of where I noticed that word. And then later, I think this goes back to like back when we used to travel, because my husband's a grad student. So like there's always travel funding for various things, and I just hitch like a ride. And so we were in Greece, and there are these like monasteries built on top of, I don't know if they're technically called karst, but they're like these giant rock pillars, like natural forming. It's called Meteora is the area. And so we traveled around there as well. And I was just like, things on rocks are so cool. And
I have acquired that word, and I use it out of context frequently.
Your new favorite word.
I do want to know for everybody else, if we were blessed with an adaptation of this wonderful story, if you would want it to be a show, a movie, or a video game.
Oh, I would just want it to go somewhere. I don't care what format. I think, like, in an ideal, amazing world, I don't know. I think I like miniseries a lot. I think you can do a lot with them. But I do feel like the books do kind of follow like a 3-act structure in a kind of film-like way. So I would be hesitant to do like a mini episode miniseries if it were a miniseries. But I think that is where a lot of sort of creative like things are happening. Interesting things are happening with adaptations in the miniseries format right now. So that would be my gut instinct. I wouldn't mind an animated version. I think that could be really fun.
That would be really cool. I definitely think that when people talk about adaptations, there is this resistance to things being animated. And I don't know why, because you don't have to worry about the special effects looking terrible. I mean, this first season of Game of Thrones, the special effects don't look exceptional. I mean, so I feel like they got better as, you know, they got more popular. But with an animated series, you don't have to worry about like, well, this one part was drawn not as well or like animated. It's like it's all going to follow an art style, an animation style.
How to Train Your Dragon's a masterpiece, as is Kung Fu Panda 2.
And also just like Avatar, like The Last Airbender is like just incredible. I mean, I have a kind of, my pet theory is that like specifically magic, so this wouldn't really be that relevant for my books, but magic doesn't really look good in live action forms. It like you really need it to be animated for it to be not corny. I feel like maybe the exception is Lord of the Rings, but their magic is very like organic, subdued magic. Like I think anything where you're like you got a wizard casting spells, it doesn't look good in live action. I don't know.
I agree.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I think a show would be wonderful, and a lot of adaptations now are going from, well, just TV shows in general on things like Netflix. I think they used to be more about 12 episodes, and now they're reducing it to 8 for a lot of them. And I could see the book being done in 8 episodes for a book. I think that would be really cool. We talked about one of the fan castings, but do any of you have any fan castings at all?
I'm terrible at fan casting.
I am too, but I really like the Mads Mikkelsen. Like, I love that. That is forever in my head now.
Yes, Alan.
Maggie Smith as Dora. The patrician lady, Maggie Smith.
See, I pictured I don't know her actual name, but she plays Alina Tyrell in Game of Thrones. That's who I pictured as Dora.
That's good too.
I like her too.
I just like Maggie Smith in anything. I'm picturing Lady Violet from Downton Abbey. That's what I'm picturing.
I just like the idea of unknowns, like especially for like the younger actor. I love that.
Yeah, I agree.
Too. I think I told Eldis, she had asked about like models for the two Lee and Annie, and one face that I kind of like when I saw her, I was like, that's kind of exactly how I pictured Annie, is the red-haired girl from Stranger Things. Have you watched like season 2 Stranger Things? No. Anyway, that's kind of like, that's a dead ringer for me.
I need to look it up really quick. I know I looked it up before when I was trying to get an idea for the art, but
I don't remember.
Redhead, Stranger Things.
Yeah.
And then I feel like, as far as locations, and I know when you were asking on Instagram about where you would insert dragons into various different places, and I was like, gotta be Iceland. Like, Iceland just feels like there would be dragons there. With the black sand beaches, the volcanic, there's all the like interesting environment. I just feel like it would be perfect. I don't know. I also am just for Iceland.
There's got to be karst.
Karst.
Is it? Here, I'll try to see if I can get it without a glare. Is that the right one?
That's her. What is her name? What is her name?
Sadie Sink, I believe.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Yes. And then for Lee, you're just like typical aristocratic looking guy.
I mean, so it's really like it's Timothée Chalamet, right? But I just like I feel like he's everyone right now, right? Because I also think of him as sort of a Paul Atreides type character. So it's like it's really just Timothée Chalamet, but yeah.
I pictured Shawn Mendes in my head because I think there was references to his cheekbone. And I was like, one person I could think of is Shawn Mendes.
Alan, do you have any generically good-looking people that come to mind?
I don't know any of them. They all look the same to me.
So
all these young kids.
Time, Rosaria. We were filming a video for World Hoppers talking about Grisha. And at one point we were talking about the casting for that show, and Alan's like, everybody's just generically good looking and they're all leaning on things and they're all wearing black. And I was like, I've seen the casting picture. They're definitely not all wearing black. And he was like, yes, they are. And then he's like, I'm going to look it up. And he found the picture and he was like, so a lot of them are leaning and it's in black and white. And it was like, wait.
Like 10 minutes later, I figured out, I was like, well, they are wearing black, but that is because they're in black and white. But all these shows nowadays, like these shows for like a younger generation, like they're all like the cats are generically attractive. Like I cannot tell I just filmed the video talking about like if you removed the guy playing Archie from Riverdale and stuck him in Grisha clothes and then switched him, I would not be able to tell that it was two different people.
But Alan, you think the Grisha are the monsters?
They are. The Grisha are the monsters. I don't know what a Grisha is.
I do think, like, have you watched anything that was cast in the 80s or 90s? Because I know you think they look generic now, but try like 10 or 20 years ago. It's much more.
I can tell the difference in those kids.
No,
they were all like 30-year-old teenagers.
That's exactly.
And try watching Dawson's Creek. Like,
I love
a whole episode.
But yes,
but it's like rewatching it now. It's like,
I can't.
Yeah. I liked it too.
Tasty.
I can tell Joshua Jackson. He was Charlie from the Mighty Ducks.
He was
true.
I'm going to jump into one more would you rather question. Ooh. And it would be, it's kind of similar to the last one, but it doesn't have to do with the dragons. It's just, would you rather live in their society before the revolution or after? Which I feel like the being caught up in the middle of a revolution is difficult for everybody. I mean, Alan and I picked Lee's situation before, so like it wouldn't be that bad for us. If it were before the revolution.
The answer is after, because then you have the hero of the people, Atreus, leading a utopic society where everything is fair. And I would test gold.
So it would be good for you.
Great for you.
At the top again.
That's great.
That's great. That's great for all the people that are not like dyslexic.
Yeah.
Well, that made me so sad. That
So
part.
sad.
Oh, that was so sad. That was so sad. But it's not Atreus' fault. Atreus is the hero and is doing his best.
It's kind of his fault. It's actually all his fault.
Well, do you know what that person would be doing if it wasn't for Atreus? Working and dying on a farm. So you're welcome. You're welcome that now you get to like work in a factory. You're welcome.
It's much better, yes. Factory labor
Factories and farms.
way better.
But so much better.
But you're not starving.
I
At the
also
beginning.
feel like perhaps some of our feelings, I'm not trying to gang up on you, Alan, but I feel like some of our feelings are based on the fact that we've finished Flamefall and you haven't yet.
I think so.
Guys, I mean that's fine. I mean, I don't have to finish it. Like, I mean, that's fine. Like, I'm not going to come back and be like, you know what? I was wrong about Atreus. I'll be like, I'm not. I have a sign.
Maybe.
I don't
I've
know
got
if that's what I'm thinking of.
Look, I have a T-shirt that says Atreus on it. I don't, but I want one.
You
You know what to get Alan for Christmas.
Yes. Oh,
terrifying.
speaking of getting, so Rosaria, we're just kind of filling you in on some of the silliness of our friends, but Alan lost a challenge in one of his videos, and as a punishment, not trying to diss this book, but just because this was not Alan's interest at all, he had to read A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Oh, he loved
And then
it.
Oh, that's why there's that video. Okay. I just saw part of that video because I was like, it doesn't seem like his type of book. And then I got to like, I just clicked on a random spot, and he's like, well, so they just stand around in the court all day with like their wings. And I was like, it's not his kind of book. What is this?
Yeah. We also, a lot of people have sent him merch from the Accord of, like, what have you gotten? You've gotten fan art,
They
bookmark.
sent me a ACOTAR coloring book.
Yeah.
Jesse right there sent me ACOTAR bookmarks where I can't tell the difference between those characters. They're all
I don't know who they are either, though.
And I have apparently someone sent me a mug that says a court of like loving resand or something like that.
Well, I feel like we
That's
need to get
hilarious.
merch for Fireborn and Flamefall.
There does need to be Fireborn merch. I would buy all of it.
Oh, there's like a book sleeve that Book Gizmo did, which is pretty cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
fun.
But
I'll try
there's
to
all merch.
get it and then link it for when this is actually
Yeah.
Can we
officially
get a
out.
revolutionary flag, like a flag of the Triarch, and then a flag of the Revolution? I would buy the Revolution one.
That was, I originally pitched that to Penguin. I was like, so you could print propaganda posters for the new regime. And they're like, great idea. And then
I love that.
Who do I need to email?
when my husband and I
I
wrote,
demand propaganda posters.
That would be fun. And I love
Yeah.
those details throughout the book of these little things where it was just so organic in the story that they would be walking and it's like, this is why you should be a part of this class. It's the skilled, workers and things. And I'm like, oh, I love those little details.
Mhm.
I think that I mean, everybody wants to be a hero. So if I had the potential to be a hero in the after, that would be pretty cool. But also I don't want to die. So I feel like I would absolutely get killed if I was after the revolution. But I gotta go. I feel like I have to go with after because I gotta try to stand
because
up
you're,
for what's right.
why would you get killed? Because you're an aristocrat? You
No, I
already picked your
feel
role?
like because I'm small and weak. I would I would like end up in a not great position, or even if I managed to become a dragon rider, I would be like Alan is saying, I wouldn't be as good as everybody. I'd be like Duck. I'd be bad at my job. So
No.
Welcome to the 32nd Order.
I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you rather live before or after?
That's so hard with the testing because, like, I think one of the things that really got me in the first book, and it's such a small, like, little detail, but it was the fact that the one sister was dyslexic. My daughter's dyslexic. So, like, that's all that, like, kept going through my head at the time. So I'm like, man, that would really suck, like, to live after.
Right.
Especially, like, as a parent, like, to have to be, like, separated because you test differently. So, like, that really, really got to me in that one. So, like, that one really hit home. But I would still probably have to go with after, because it just seems like the before was even that much worse.
Because it didn't have Atreus.
Atreus was part of them.
He was
like
there
you-
technically.
He was there.
He needs to make me propaganda minister. I got it
Yeah.
back.
You're the only one, Alan.
Ashley, what I have a guess, but what would you pick?
Yeah, I would just have to say afterwards, just because I would have the opportunity at least to maybe move up. I'm probably not, because it's a faulty system, because Atreus is not perfect. But yeah,
But
There's
he's
also
close.
a chance that you could be
I
a
could
drag
go lower.
Mhm.
It's true.
That chance
It's
is
true.
there. So, but I mean, is this another one, Rosaria, that you conveniently can't answer because of your
I can answer. I think I can answer this one. I would probably use use my political theory background. I think what you want to think about it is in terms of the maxi-min solution, right? So like you want to maximize like the worst, like what is the worst possible? So like let's say this is very Rawls, like John Rawls. It's like so like if you have a veil of ignorance, you don't know which person you will be in the society. Like then you want to make sure that the worst possible scenario that might be yours is like the best possible scenario. So I think the maxi-min solution between these two would be after the revolution, because I think the poorest are still a little better off than they were before.
even though it's a very faulty system
Even though
still.
it's very faulty. Yeah.
Y'all leave that man alone.
I'm gonna need some fan art to send to Alan. Like,
Please.
We need to
Just
make
such a good character. It's a good character, despite like in seriousness, despite the difficulties of Atreus within the book. Good character. Like it's a good character. Like so good. One of my new faves.
So good.
So good.
We just need a picture now of Atreus fan art, and then so good. That's what we need.
Sounds like
were
a
there
meeting.
any other things that you guys wanted to ask or chat about before we call? I know we've been talking for over an hour now.
Yeah, I kind of had a question. It kind of talked about like the your involvement in the creative aspect of it. How did you feel, if you can answer, about it being tagged as being Red Rising meets Game of Thrones? Like, did you feel like that was accurate or a good pitch?
You know, it's interesting. The pitching strategies are very different depending on like what stage you're at, because like when I was querying and when like you're not really supposed to use big names when you're querying, because it's like showing like you would never use Game of Thrones as a comp when you're trying to query, because it just makes it look like you've never read any books besides Game of Thrones. So I was very startled when the strategy changed for like the open market. I think originally they had Red Rising meets Serafina, which I think was a better like approximation. But I think the idea, they changed it because Game of Thrones was like in season 8, so it was like height of Game of Thrones excitement when they settled on that final pitch. And then also I think just the idea that like maybe Serafina was not as wide reaching, as like not everyone knows like what Serafina is. So it was interesting watching the strategy change a bit. I didn't mind it. I mean, I like I guess, okay, I'm not like a huge Red Rising fan, but I feel like we are sister brother novels. Like I kind of get it. Like it's like Red Rising is like, what if Lee were like very narcissistic but still really good at what he did? You know, like I don't know, because I don't like Darrow. I really don't like Darrow.
That's a common thing.
It's a common, yeah. I think it's like a thing, you know. But and I feel like we both like take the Plato's Republic model with like the medals and everything. So it's like actually it's more similar than people I think even realize it is, for reasons like that they don't usually realize. Like usually they will say that Fireborn like borrowed the medal system from Red Rising, and it's like no, like we both borrowed from Plato. So that's fine. I don't know. Yeah, did you not like that comp? Or like I'm curious why you
No, it's actually why I picked it up, because I did a whole reading series where I wanted to see like the accuracy of books being marketed as being like Game of Thrones. And I haven't done a wrap up yet because I've kind of been like off BookTube for a while. But in my opinion, I feel like the Red Rising meets Game of Thrones was like the most accurate pitch of the 5 books that I read. So
interesting. Well, good. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah.
Alan,
Okay.
you have a whole
I love Alan's video.
Game of Thrones video.
When I first started BookTube, like I was trying to find a bunch of books. I hadn't read fantasy in a long time, and every single book I was looking up was like, "Oh, it's like Game of Thrones," and I'm like, "There's no way this is not possible." Every book can't be Game of Thrones. It just can't. Like,
Yeah.
I have to say,
any of them are not.
one of my favorite, you get the little, I'm totally spacing on what it's called, but the little author, like a fellow author will give a blurb. Thank you. So, what is that dinosaur series called?
Yes.
Dinotopia? No.
It's the Dinosaur Lords. Is that
Dinosaur
what you're thinking of?
No. I don't
Laugh
remember.
every time there is a blurb from George R.R. Martin, and it says this is basically Game of Thrones with dinosaurs, and I'm like, it's like your own book with dinosaurs. I don't
I
understand.
like that man enjoys writing weird blurbs. Like he's
The
like
only other
George R.
blurb I've ever seen that I feel like is less helpful. Well, I mean, like some of them are especially not helpful, but I shouldn't say it wasn't helpful, but it's just kind of like, no, I feel like a lot of blurbs aren't actually that helpful, but there's one, I think, for Mistborn by Robin Hobb, and it just says something like, great for if you're in the mood for amazing fantasy or something. Like, I'm like, okay, like I'm always in the mood for amazing fantasy. Is this the only option?
a weird
I don't know.
qualifier. Yeah.
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 Alan, you were
I have a
called.
question.
Okay.
Can we guess the name of the third book?
You could try, but it hasn't been set by like the publisher hasn't. I haven't. We don't know yet.
You
So
don't
I can't
know
even.
it.
I don't even know if you're right.
I was gonna say maybe Blaze Death, Emberized. I'm trying to find a synonym.
Maybe
for
I should
fire.
contact you when it becomes.
You should. Got a whole list. I'll just go down. Compound words. I got it.
I like
List
that
of
property.
flaming compound words.
Tell
like
Penguin Pinions to contact me.
Is there anything that you could tell us about book 3 without like
I'm
spoilers?
spoiling book 2 for Alan.
Or like book 1 for readers.
Ooh. Is there going to be a new POV in book 3?
That's a
I'm
good
hoping
question.
for it. I'm hoping for it. That's also kind of like, I mean, a lot changes between drafts, so we'll see. It wouldn't be like a new character, but it might be a new POV.
Oh.
We'll see.
That-
And going for I think I mentioned this before we were live, but maybe going for like an Odyssey theme with the quotes. Yeah, so you have a Iliad Odyssey.
Makes me so happy. It makes
But
me so
so
It
exciting.
does.
I'm so excited.
I really liked the addition of a third POV in Flamefall.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yes.
That's a risky proposition. I originally told my agent, I was like, I have a new POV, and she was like, don't do it. Do not do it. And I was like, okay. Then I asked my editor, and she was like, you can do it so long as it's sexy. And I was like, okay. And then I sent it to her, and she was like, this is okay.
I loved it. I love
What
that
happened to
so much.
sufficiently sexy dragons? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Why aren't the dragons enough? I also really like the new perspective, and I think it was a really cool addition for what Flamefall is showing,
Mhm.
which I obviously can't get into too many details, but it does allow you more insight into
The world.
the differences between the new and the old, and it highlights the issues with the new and the old simultaneously. I don't know. I loved it, and I loved how it gave you almost like a different perspective of the characters you already know.
Mhm.
How the world would see them differently depending on their circumstances, which I really loved.
Yeah. I like
That was really cool.
I so want book 3.
I know, right?
The ending. Alan,
I think I finished it, and then I texted in the group. I'm like, y'all, I finished it. What do I do with myself now? Like,
yes.
We have to wait. We have to wait. I'm gonna
Yeah.
finish it soon, y'all. Give me a second.
Is there a timeline at when it should be released? Like maybe next week or
My publisher would love that. So usually the goal of the publisher is 12 months after. So like
Okay.
they would ideally publish it next March, but that's like, I don't know.
It comes out on my birthday next year, March
I was
8th.
going to say, it was basically a birthday present for Alan and I, because
Yeah.
both of us had birthdays. And So books usually come out on Tuesdays, if I'm right.
They do.
So
Do they really?
our birthdays next year are not on Tuesdays, but it could come out on the 22nd. It would be right after our birthdays. So
yes, that is what we will. That is what in my mind I am predicting.
Well, now I know what to angle for.
Right now, I'm like, wait.
They're so good. These books are good. These books are really good. Like I've been telling everyone in my Discord, like I'm just like, guys, like for real, like this is the best. Like this is my favorite beginning of a series that I've read this year. I just concluded like a series, and like the conclusion was really good, so I had to like rank that higher. But if I had not finished that series, this would have been my favorite book that I read this year. So it is like. It is my. Oh, it's so good.
I'll end all of my thoughts, because we've been here for a while, on the fact that I told my husband, I was like, she literally can do anything with the ending and I will be satisfied. Like you can write a super like everything tied up in a pretty little bow and I'll be like, the characters deserve it after everything we've gone through. You could make everybody die and I'd be like, that, that makes sense.
I should just tell my editor that and be like, so I can write anything. It'll be so good.
But I've never experienced that before. Like there are some books that I'm reading where, I'm anticipating the end of the series or things like that. And I'm like, please don't mess it up. Please don't mess it up. And this one, I'm like, whatever you do. I don't even care. Whatever you do, I'm going to be like, it's perfect. So
I'm sure no, but I'm curious that I want to hear you guys' thoughts about like, what do you think makes a good series ending?
Oh man. I mean, I am always a sucker for tragedy. I like bittersweet where there is a sense of loss. It doesn't necessarily mean like character deaths, but there's this I kind of am a sucker for you never realize how much worse it could get. And then by the end, you as the reader or the characters or both kind of realize like everything they've gone through and the things that they have lost along the way. But then there's like a sense of hope in some like I mean, it depends, of course. Like Joe Abercrombie's known for writing books where you're just like everything sucks and nothing ever changes, and that's kind of a too sometimes. But yeah, I think I like this sense of it's not perfect. Well, it's hard. It depends. Like this is what's right. Like there's I don't want to say because I don't want to like hint at spoilers, but there's a duology I read where the ending is like quite pretty little bow. And I actually really liked it. It was kind of what I was hoping would happen. But then there's other series where, a bunch of people die and I'm like, it was so good. And basically I'm saying I have no help whatsoever. And like, it depends on how it's done.
Yeah, I love a bittersweet ending. Like I love it. Like I said, I'm an easy crier though. So like pretty much if something makes me cry, I'm good.
Yeah.
I like the endings where when it's over, it elevated what came before it. Like when it ends, like I liked the first 2 books better because of how it wrapped up. Meaning that everything they went through, like what I mean is that everything they went through mattered. Like there's a video game series called Mass Effect that has 3 games and it ends and nothing you did over the first 2 and the entire 3rd game mattered. The ending, it was completely irrelevant to the decisions that have been made, the characters, the relationships, and that it infuriated really everybody. And that's extreme. But I mean, I've read series to where it's just like, I mean, this could be self-contained, and it's fine. But like the best ones, like I just think like everything was building really to this point, and it feels super earned. And like Elle says, like along the way they lost stuff, especially when you're following like the same characters like over a period of time. I don't know. That's the kind of stuff that I like. It just those are the ones that really stand out to me.
Yeah, I hate when the consequences aren't there.
Yeah,
like especially, and it happens a lot in like more like just fantasy where it's like a lot of magic where it's like, oh, and we reversed everything and all these sacrifices didn't matter.
Yeah, you can't violate Brandon's innocence laws.
Like I hate that. Oh,
what was that you said, Rosaria? You can't violate what?
Brandon Sanderson's like laws of magic. It can't resolve more than you already understand from the magic.
I will say, I think the Mistborn series is probably my favorite ending to a trilogy.
Which is funny because Ashley would not agree.
Well, Alan also doesn't agree with my love of the end of the Poppy War series, so.
I didn't.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge. I mean, like it was fine, but it wasn't what I had envisioned. But I understand it. All I will say about endings is, as long as it's not like the ending to Game of Thrones, the TV show.
Yeah, and I think Alan like nailed why people didn't like that ending, because it made so many other things not matter. Right.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I think talking about what we like. I
We
think
don't want to like sway you anyway.
I do feel like talking about endings is a good way to end this. But this was so much fun. Thank you for sitting down and chatting with us and letting us pick your brain about this and sharing your writing process and thoughts behind this wonderful series that we all want everybody to read.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for like setting aside your time to all get together and talk. This is so much fun.
It was so fun. But well, I mean, honestly, welcome back anytime when the third book comes out. I have a feeling we're gonna have lots of thoughts. So I don't know, maybe we'll be really angry with you and we won't want to see you ever again.
I was gonna say, like, don't worry, I don't I try not to watch the videos, so you can dislike it at your heart's content.
No, but I think it's so fun getting to chat with you. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll try to find any merch for the story if you're a fan yourself to put in the description bar. We'll of course link Fireborn and Flamefall. We'll link Rosaria's her social media, all that fun stuff. But anyway, thank you everybody for joining us for this almost hour and a half long chat, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.